Right. Okay, it's just hasn't started yet, that's all. It's Chicago. Mhm. Want to hamper hard all day?
No,
You can have a lot of foods.
I don't want to, I'm full.
Look at, yeah, well, look, I want to show you, this is all you're getting there. You know, I have a hard all day.
Which one? How is it outside?
This morning.
Okay. I can't take that 150 milligrams.
Oh, you took 150? I thought you took 100 last night.
100. I can't take 100. I took 100 and I can't take it. I fell asleep, almost hit a mailbox, almost hit a pole.
Okay, well,
I'm here falling asleep on the bike, not just one time, just constantly.
well, that's it. Okay, no more.
I'm trying. I can't do it.
More on it. You can't drive when you have that stuff.
I wouldn't be able to drive.
Like cottage cheese or have a egg, which one? Cottage cheese or have an egg?
Cottage cheese.
Okay, I'll save it for tomorrow morning then. Coffee. Did want to start up with the spoon?
Yes, yes. Tell them that John went back into the hospital.
On home. Oh, I don't know if she knows them.
I don't,
Yeah, she knows of them. I don't think she knows them.
no, John and Carol, they just
Yeah.
left.
They left, but he's now in the hospital up in the in Cleveland, yeah. It's not doing so great.
Hi, Estelle. Hi, Sam. Looks like our class is here, but no teacher.
Hi, Lois.
Hi, everybody.
Oh, hi. Welcome home, Estelle.
Oh, thanks very much. How have you all been?
Not bad.
Good. Seems to be a while since we've, yeah, it has been a good few weeks since we've had a class.
Yeah, quite a few.
Oh, there's Rabbi.
Oh, hi, Rabbi. Hi.
Hi,
Hi, Rabbi.
hi, Estelle.
Hi. Welcome back,
Thursday-
Rabbi.
Thank you very much. Are you back? Are you-
Yes, I'm back.
So on Thursday, I was mentioning to the Thursday class that I just got a new book from Akiva Tatz. And in that book, he mentions this group of people which got together on Shabbos in his house for several years, and formed, they had like a meeting in his house for several years, and then eventually at some point they joined or combined with another synagogue to be, but this book was a combined effort between him and the members of that synagogue, and he mentions Asherson.
Oh, yeah, it's my son.
It had to
Mark.
be. I told Lois it had to be because he said that these were mainly South Africans who were in
Yes.
London. And so
Yes.
that's awesome. He
I
mentions
must ask my son about it. What is the name of the book?
it's called Sabbath and Festivals or something. I have it at TLC. When we do Thursday class, I'll show you the
Okay.
image. But I think it's
Alright.
called Sabbath and Festivals. And he talks about it as a project of the group because that way there was some tangible, if something that came about
Give the rabbi a
that,
check.
that they could still hold or can.
Yeah. So I
he
don't
meant-
think he has it anymore though, does he?
No,
No.
he said it joined with a synagogue. I guess there were more people started to become part of it, and then they needed to really become part of a facility, so they joined with a synagogue.
Yes.
But he talks about it as very precious time, and the way my understanding, I haven't read the whole book yet, but it seems like what happens is the way they made this a group project is they had questions and he would have, he'd develop answers, and somehow in the give and take between the various members and Rabbi Tatz, they came up with this book.
Oh, really?
Yes, but I knew it had to be your son.
I must ask Mark about it when I speak to him over the week on Sunday.
Okay,
Wow. Thanks for telling me.
you're very welcome. All right. In fact, let's just, as long as we're here for 1 second, we'll look it up. Apparently you can get it on Amazon too. This is the book. See it? Can you see it, Estelle? I'm showing it on the thing here.
Shabbat festivals.
Shabbat and the Festival's Journey and Destination, Akiva Tatz.
Is it like a is it like a narrative or just question and answers?
Well, he's obviously his end result is always deep and transformative, but sometimes he gets there through questions. But what is the special nature of Shabbos? What is the special nature of Yom Tov in a deep sense? That's how it always. And other questions, why does Shabbos do it? I was hoping you would say. All right, anyways, that's that book. So now we are going back. The app security policy. So last time we were talking about the Olas Re'iyah, the offering, the elevation offering that was brought, as the Rambam lists the different mitzvahs connected to what we call Aliyah L'Regel, going up for the pilgrimage festival. These mitzvahs are reflected in offerings. So there was the Re'iyah offering. He says here in Mitzvah 52, at one point, he says, 3 commandments are practiced on the festival. This is in the middle of the paragraph. The festival offering, which is called the Chagiga, the sight offering, that's what we call the Re'iyah, and the joy offering. So he identifies them as 3 separate mitzvot. They are mitzvahs which are not just about the offering, but the offering somehow captures or becomes the sort of gathering point of the mitzvah. So you're meant to actually, if you're a male and in good health, you're actually commanded to walk up to the Beit HaMikdash and into the courtyard of the Beit HaMikdash. You're supposed to walk up and be present there. And the holiday itself is also supposed to be festive. And this is reflected in 3 offerings. One is the Chagiga offering, which is brought for each one of the festivals, the word Chag. And that is an animal, I'm assuming it's a lamb, that is brought as a peace offering. And then it might also be a cow, I don't remember. It could be, it's also a cow, like a calf. It's brought as a peace offering, and then that meat is, some of it is burnt on the altar, and then a lot of it is brought home to be eaten by the family. There is a korban re'iyah, which is what they call the sight offering, and that is the offering you bring. You're seeing, as it were, you're seeing God, as it were, and you're being seen by God. So that is and that is an elevation offering. That means that all the meat is burnt on the altar. And then there is a simcha offering. The simcha offering is an animal that is brought, the meat, again, some of it burnt on the altar is a peace offering, and then most of it brought home to the family. so if you have meat during the festival, and it was considered a huge part of the joy of the festival, was to have meat. So you'd be there for a week of festival if it's Pesach or Sukkot, and I mean it's one day for Shavuos, but if it's Pesach or Sukkot, it's an entire week of festival, and you're expected to have festival meals every day. So there'd be a lot of meat, and so every extra bit of meat would come from what they called the Simcha offering, and it had said originally the joy is around the meat. When the temple is standing, rejoicing is only through the meat, as it said here in the middle of this. What? Go away. Darn. Never just push something. So it said that when the temple was around, it was mainly about the meat. After the temple was lost, so it's now mainly through wine is where the joy is happening. But in those days, obviously you had wine too. It wasn't just meat. Okay, so, and then we had this discussion, would you bring this re'iyah even if it wasn't on the festivals? And the language we saw as we further looked into it made it sound like no. You only bring this re'iyah on the festivals. If you go up to the Beis HaMikdash for other reasons, you don't necessarily have to bring a korban re'iyah. You're most likely, if you're going to the courtyard of the Beit HaMikdash, you're most likely going because of a sacrifice, but you don't have to be. There was a viewing area for representatives, just Israelites who want to watch the korbanos being brought, and there was encouragement that there be Israelites watching it because that really makes it a public experience.
Rabbi, doesn't it seem like they're putting too much emphasis? I don't know what I don't know the answer, but don't you think they're putting too much emphasis on food, like meat? And this is because you were going to say wine, but I was going to say right now, don't they use prayer as the thing, for substitute for the sacrifice?
Well, first of all, if you look at some of the text when it talks about these offerings, it leads you in a path that a lot of the commentaries go, which is to say that there are many altars, so to speak. There are many versions of an altar. There's the physical altar, which has a physical fire on it, where some of the offerings are brought. Then there's the Kohen. The Kohen himself is like an altar, and when he consumes the food that is for the Kohen, that he himself, it's the equivalent of what was brought on the altar. And then there's the everyday Jew who also, when they eat, amount to a kind of altar. In other words, there's a way of looking at it where all of this is a kind of way of offering up to God. There's the physical altar, there's the Kohen altar, there's the regular Jewish altar. In fact, there are elements of the Shabbos table, the holiday table, and certainly the Seder table that suggest that the kind of festive meal around the table is in some ways an altar. That the service that's happening in the home is a kind of parallel to the kind of service that happens in the Beit HaMikdash. There's always salt on the table because there's always salt on the altar. When we do the breads and the wine and different kinds of things that we're doing, these are sometimes described as offerings and libation. And this allows for a kind of a crossover between what some people would call obvious divine worship and the less obvious divine worship, and the notion that in truth, everything that we do can be a way of serving God. There are, when it comes to creation, if you go back to the creation story, the very first discussion that God has with Adam and Eve about life in this world. I mean, he does bless them that they be fruitful and multiply. He does do that. And he talks to them about managing the birds, the fish, the birds, and the animals. But after that, he talks to them about what they're going to eat. It's like one of the first things. And it is, when you look at the design of the human being, it's a kind of glaring problem, which is that the human being is designed in such a way that if it doesn't get food and water, it will perish. So it's not an independent operator, as it were. It's constantly kind of tethered. It's tethered to creation, and in a certain way tethered to God. And that's the Chidushei Harim, the first Ger Rebbe makes this point, and others as well, that it's as if God is leaving something that is going to ensure continued contact with the human being, because the human being is going to constantly be in need of food and drink. So that this is like when you send a kid away to college and they're calling for money. This is like your one guaranteed way of staying in touch with your kids afterwards, because they still need you for your, to send money. So this is how you'll see many of the commentaries understanding our need for food and drink. So our need for food and drink is itself a kind of ensured point of contact between us and God. So therefore, it makes it particularly ripe for service of God. This thing is so super sensitive. Okay, so now we're at the Korban Pesach. That is that he commanded us to eat the lamb of the Pesach offering. This is mitzvah 56. To eat the lamb of the Pesach offering on the night of the 15th of Nisan, according to the stipulations mentioned. And that is roasted, that is eaten in one's house, and that is eaten with matzah and bitter herbs. And that is his saying, God's saying, they shall eat the meat that night. They shall eat it roasted with fire, with matzah, and with bitter herbs. And perhaps a questioner will challenge me and say, why do you count the eating of the Pesach offering, matzah and bitter herbs, as one commandment and not count them as 3 commandments? I would then answer him that it is true that eating of the matzah is a separate commandment, as I will explain later in the positive commandment 158. Likewise is the eating of the meat of the Pesach offering a separate commandment, as we have mentioned. However, the bitter herbs are an extension of eating the Pesach offering and are not counted as a separate commandment. And the proof of the matter is that the meat of the Pesach offering is eaten to fulfill the commandment, whether bitter herbs are available or whether they are not available. But bitter herbs are only eaten with the meat of the Pesach offering. Now, what he means by that is biblically. That's why we maintain that today the eating of the maror is rabbinic. It is a rabbinic enactment to continue to eat the maror, even though there's no Korban Pesach. But really, the maror was meant to be eaten together with the Korban Pesach. The bitter herbs are only eaten with the meat of the Pesach offering, as is saying, as Hashem says, upon bitter herbs they shall eat it. But if one ate bitter herbs without the meat, he has not done anything, and we do not say that he's already fulfilled a commandment, again, on a biblical level. The language of the Mechilta, which is Midrash, they shall eat it roasted with fire, with matzah, and with bitter herbs, tells us that the commandment of the Pesach offering is roasted meat, matzah, and bitter herbs, or as we presently call it, a shawarma. This means that the commandment is the combination of these. And there they said, from where do we know that which you say that if you don't have the matzah and the bitter herbs, you still fulfill the mitzvah of the Pesach offering? So let's say for some reason they couldn't get matzah or maror, and all they have is the lamb, you still fulfill the mitzvah. So they say, I might think that they do not have a Pesach offering, they do not fulfill their obligation with matzah and bitter herbs. Behold, you argue the Pesach offering is a positive commandment, and matzah and bitter herbs are positive commandment. Behold, you've learned that if you don't have matzah and bitter herbs, you still fulfill the obligation of the Pesach offering. So too, if you don't have Pesach offering, you fulfill the obligation for matzah and bitter herbs. Hence, we learn to say, upon matzah and bitter herbs, they shall eat it. And there they also say, they shall eat it. From here, we know that the Pesach offering is to be eaten in a state of satiety, but matzah and maror are not necessarily to be eaten in a state of satiety. That is because the essence of the commandment is the eating of the meat. As he said, they shall eat the meat that night. Whereas the bitter herbs are an extension of the eating of the meat, and their obligation is explained from the verses for those that understand them. Actually, if you go back and look at it the way he just captured it, there is a point where it sounds like that the bitter herbs would be a mitzvah even without the meat. But if we really looked at it in context, we would see what he's saying, which is that the bitter herbs are a mitzvah, but they're a mitzvah together with the meat. They shall eat the meat that night. Whereas the bitter herbs are an extension of the eating of the meat, and their obligation is explained from the verses for those that understand them. Take his word for it. The obvious proof of this is the following statement in the Talmud. And that is they're saying bitter herbs in our days is rabbinic. There's no obligation from the Torah to eat them by themselves. Rather, they should be eaten with the meat of the Pesach offering. And that is a clear proof that they are from those things that are extensions of the commandment of the Pesach offering, and that their eating is not a separate commandment. And the regulations of this commandment are also explained in Tractate Pesachim. So most of this is to explain why he's not counting maror as a separate commandment. He will count matzah as a separate commandment, but he is not counting maror as a separate commandment. And that's why a lot of this language was here, to tell us that although it is a biblical commandment and deserves separate mention, but it's never biblical if there is no meat. There's no point in it if there is no meat. I mean, biblically, rabbinically, they still want us to do it, but biblically, it was meant to be eaten together with the meat. We still eat. We have like the matzah and maror together. Of course, if it was during the time of the Korban Pesach, if we wanted to fully experience it, that would be matzah, Korban Pesach, and maror together, which again is a shawarma, basically. Okay. Mitzvah 57. That is, that he commanded us that whoever was prevented from slaughtering the first Pesach offering, slaughter the second Pesach offering. And that is his maybe exalted saying, they shall offer it in the second month at twilight. Now, I'm just checking here for a second. Just want to see what day this is going to be. The day is called Pesach Sheni. Just want to see when Pesach Sheni is. Today is the 10th of Iyar. So Pesach Sheni is in is on Friday. This Friday is Pesach Sheni. So in a time where korbanos were being offered, then you could, if you weren't for some reason able to bring it on the first Pesach, you could have a makeup day, and that makeup day is what we call Pesach Sheni. So before Pesach, I was suggesting that I thought it was very likely that there would be somebody who would try to bring the Korban Pesach this year. So it's possible that there might still be some guy who's going to try to do it on Friday. You never know. In my research this year, I did find that there was an organization or people that were offering a reward to anybody who tried to bring the Korban Pesach this year. If you tried to bring the Korban Pesach and were arrested, there was a certain amount that you would get. It seems like they would cover the cost of whatever defense you needed and whatever it would cost to be arrested when you get arrested. There was a reward if you successfully brought the Korban Pesach, which I think was like $20,000 for anybody who did it. They tried to, anyways, nobody did do it, but it's still possible. It's still possible that somebody's going to sneak up and try to do it on Friday. Before the Pesach, Ben Gvir came out and told people not to do it. Is he saying anything before this Friday? We'll have to see. All right, that is, they commanded us that whoever was prevented from slaughtering the first Pesach offering, slaughter the second Pesach offering. And that is his maybe exalted saying, they shall offer it in the second month, etc., at twilight. And here there is room for the questioner to challenge me. Why do you count the second Pesach offering as a separate mitzvah? That contradicts what you've prefaced in the seventh principle. When you said that a law of a commandment is not counted as a separate commandment. Isn't this just a rule related to Korban Pesach? There's a mitzvah to bring the Korban Pesach. If you can't bring it on this date, then you bring it on a different date. So the mitzvah of Korban Pesach is the primary mitzvah. This mitzvah shouldn't be counted as a separate mitzvah. This is like a rule about bringing Korban Pesach. The questioner of this challenge should know that the sages already argue about whether the second Pesach offering is a law of the first or a distinct command. And the legal decision was that it was a command stated on its own. So therefore, it is appropriate to count it separately. In the Gemara Psachim 93a, they said one is liable for excision, in other words, kares penalty, for not observing the first, and one is liable for excision for not observing the second. In other words, if you were supposed to bring the Korban Pesach and you just did not, you just refused to do it, now you're subject to the kares level penalty. If you were subject to the second Pesach and did not do it, you are liable for a kares penalty. That makes it sound like they are two separate mitzvahs. These are the words of Rabbi Yehuda Anasi. Rabbi Natan said one is liable for kares for not doing the first, but one is exempt from kares for not observing the second. Reb Chananya ben Akiva says even for failing to observe the first, one is only liable if he didn't fulfill the second. And the Talmud then asked and said, with regard to what do they disagree, Rebbe holds that second Pesach is its own festival, whereas Reb Nosson holds that it is a redress for the first. Behold, we've already made clear that which we were referring to. And there they said, therefore, one who is volitional about this one and that one, meaning that he volitionally did not offer the Pesach offering, nor the second one, is liable according to everyone. In other words, you didn't bring a Korban Pesach and you could have, you just didn't want to, then you're liable for kores. If you didn't do the first one and the second one, everybody agrees. What if you were inadvertent about this one and that one? No. And one who's inadvertent about this one and that one is liable for everyone. If one violated, if one was volitional about the first but inadvertent about the second, according to Rabbi and Rav Nassan, he's liable. According to Rabbi Hanani ben Akiva, he's exempt. And likewise, if he was volitional about the first but sacrificed the second, he is liable according to Rebbe, because Rebbe holds that if he could have brought the first one and he didn't, then he suffers. Even if he tries to fix it by bringing the second one, it doesn't help because the second one is the second thing. It's not a fixing of the first one. As according to his opinion, there is no redress for the first. Where he writes, if he was volitional about the first, he should sacrifice the second. And that is the opposite of what he wrote here. And the law is that this is completely like Rabbi. But women, all right, so we'll just take his word for it. And again, what he is saying here is that there is an opinion, the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, which is that they are two separate events. Yes, it is true that that second event is available if you miss the first event, but it is still considered its own mitzvah and therefore deserves being counted as a separate mitzvah. This is a subtle point, but we're taking his word for it. But women are not obligated in the commandment, as it's already been explained there, that the second is optional for a woman. So what that means is they can do it, they can bring one, but they don't have to. And the regulations of the commandment have already been explained in the Gemara Psachim. We'll assume that the reason they don't have to is because it's a positive. I don't know why. He doesn't say why, actually, because they don't have the same option with the first one. With the first one, the women are commanded in Korban Pesach. They're part of the command of Korban Pesach. So, and so you can't say that this is it's a time-bound issue because the first one would have been a time-bound one too. So he's not explaining why women are not obliged in this one. Yeah, if I there's something in the back of my mind that is saying that the reason they're not obliged in it is because is something learned out from the verse, but it has nothing to do with positive time-bound commandment. Okay, so again, we have gone through, these are all the Pesach-related mitzvahs. They are sacrifice related. These are positive commandments. There's going to be negative commandments about Pesach, like not having chametz. But so far, the positive ones have been all about sacrifices. And then he mentioned, all the ones he listed are all about sacrifices so far. He is going to eventually list matzah later on. For some reason, he doesn't mention the matzah over here. I guess because in this grouping, it's been basically all sacrificial stuff. So that's why I guess he didn't mention matzah here. But he is going to mention matzah eventually. And Morer, he already explained to us why he's not going to give a separate entry for Morer. So the Korban Pesach related ones were the Musaf for Pesach, we talked about, and then you have the Korban Pesach itself, and then the elevation offering, the Chagiga offering, the Simcha offering, and that's it. And now we have Pesach Sheni, which is the lamb for Pesach Sheni that would be in place of the one you weren't able to bring the first time, and now the mitzvah to eat the lamb. That is that he commanded us to eat from the meat of the second Pesach offering on the night of the 15th of Iyar over matzah and bitter herbs. And that is his saying, upon matzah and bitter herbs shall they eat it. And they said that women are not obligated in it, for just as the slaughter is not obligatory for them, as we explained in the previous commandment. We didn't really explain it, we just said it. So too, its eating is without a doubt not obligatory. So women are not obliged to bring it, and they're not obliged to eat it. Again, they can. He said they can, but they're not obliged to do it. All right, we are going to stop here. I just want to mention, I'm very sorry about this, that I can't meet for our class tomorrow, but we'll meet again on Wednesday. So our Rambam class is going to meet again on Wednesday, cannot meet tomorrow. I'm very grateful for getting a chance to learn with you guys, and I look forward to doing it again on Wednesday. Be well.
Thank you, Rabbi.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you, Rabbi.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.